Have you loved someone so deeply that you were willing to reshape your entire life for them, even when you had no idea how? One day you're a daughter, the next day you're their memory keeper, organizer, protector, advocate, and sometimes all of these things at once. And this episode lives in a tender space where love stretches us wider than we've ever planned and asked us to grow into roles that we've never trained for, all while holding on to a relationship that matters most. My dear guest today is Shauna Sweeney, caregiver, founder, and CEO of tendercare, and she knows the shift all too well after her father, Mike, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2014, and she found herself managing every part of his life while working as a tech executive at Meta. No roadmap, firsthand experiencing how fragmented, overwhelmed, and emotionally isolating caregiving can be for families. And I'm so thankful you get to hear her heart as she reflects on the emotional collision of identities caregiving brings us, what she's learned from her dad about dignity and autonomy. We talk about inequity in caregiving and why families must be treated as the true power source of care, and how tender care is challenging a system that often centers institutions over people. And we're looking at how you can move from crisis mode to coordinated care, and what that looks like to really walk with families, and how we can walk with you and support you. And I'm so thankful for Shauna and her heart and hope as we care for one another. Here is my episode with Shauna Sweeney. Shauna, this is the day. Cannot wait to have you here and be able to visit. Finally, we get to do this. Thank you for being here with me.
I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this.
I know. When we had our first conversation, I almost felt like we should have hit record. It was so fun just to hear your story, and I'm looking forward to have you share that with everybody else. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're up to, and then we're going to dive in because I have so many fun questions for you.
Very happy to be here. I am lucky enough to be the founder and CEO for tendercare, but I'm so much more than that.
Mhm.
I'm a mom, I'm a stepmom, I'm a daughter. I'm actively caring for my dad. We've just hit 15 years, if you can believe it, as his
Wow.
primary caregiver. It's been a long road, but a wonderful one in so many ways, a real gift to me becoming
Mhm.
the person that I am today.
Yeah.
I come from a big tech world. So I started out just being obsessed with what innovation looked like, launching new things, new solutions to old problems. I come from a long line of inventors. So I grew up surrounded by my great great grandfather's patents for all different kinds of inventions that he was able to invent in his time. And so I've always been encouraged to look at the world as one which is a very active conversation with us of what new problems do we have in front of us? What new ways of thinking can we personally offer to start to solve
Mhm.
some of them? And
Mhm.
so I'm so motivated to bring so much of that background and that perspective to something that's so important to my family, which is how we all care for one another.
I know you have such a personal experience that sparked that this has to be different moment. And I want to hear more about that. What was that for you?
No, I have been lucky enough to grow up in a family in which I was always encouraged to think about what my contribution was going to be. Where was I going to help? How was I going to leave some room cleaner than I found it? This was a really big piece of the values that I grew up in with my dad in particular. And that started me on a journey into big tech where I was so excited to be doing things that had never been done in the history of humanity, if you can believe it. That sounds really crazy,
Wow.
but it was actually true. I was one of the earliest members of Facebook at a moment in time when Facebook was starting to bring on billions of people, like real live people around the world into one place. And this was just an intoxicating moment to be thinking about what role technology had in our lives. This coincided for my family with a sort of a troublesome annual wellness visit that my dad had He was a ship captain, where some of the early symptoms of early onset Alzheimer's were making themselves apparent. And for those of us who have someone in their family who's living with this condition or who has, oftentimes we know something is happening before you get the diagnosis. You don't want to know, but you kind of know. And there'd been a couple of years where my dad's stories had been getting a little more long-winded. We weren't getting to the punchline as fast as he used to. And so, this was really the other shoe dropping for us when it became clear my dad really did have early onset Alzheimer's. And um, this was a really strange tale of two cities for me because on one hand, I'm doing this really exciting stuff at work. We're getting to all these firsts. We're doing things like streaming, the Earthrise from the International Space Station in virtual reality, like wild stuff. And then at the same time, I'm trying to figure out the most hackneyed system for getting my dad's paper mail to me in New York because he's in California and being defeated over and over again by the United States Postal Service and just realizing how crazy it is to be able to be doing these very high tech initiatives while at the same time feeling like in many ways I'm getting pulled back into this like 1970s, 1980s world of fax
Really.
machines and just this whole other dynamic of what this means to be taking care of my dad.
Mhm.
And the schism or the chasm between these two worlds was like almost too much for one person to bear. I was like, this feels insane. And I really want to be able to bridge this gap a little bit more. So how do I do that? Does this crazy? Should I be doing this? Do I even have a right to be working in this space? But I had lived with it now with my dad for so long, at that point, maybe like 6 years of just helping him with his life, as a primary caregiver, get to his doctor's appointments, etc. It's like, every person comes to that moment. I think it depends on what the thing is, but where you have to ask yourself, if not you, who?
Right.
And oftentimes it's not going to be anybody. You have a very specific perspective and experience. And so I sat with this for long enough, and my dad and I had been on this journey, and I was like, I think there might be something here. The fact that I know so many engineers, I know designers, I know these amazing product leaders. Could I get enough of these incredibly talented people who've been working on these far-flung things to get excited about working on something so much closer to home, so much more personal for me? And then at that point, it was really just about being brave enough and bold enough to actually go off and do the thing. And so it took me a while. I'm shortcutting the part here where I had to get
Yeah.
all the courage from my friends, but I eventually got the courage up to leave my exec job at Facebook and go off in earnest to really build and innovate in care and figure out, what more can technology be doing for all of us as we all enter into this chapter.
I'm sure it was so eye-opening to see where you know the capabilities and the potential because you've seen it happening at Facebook to take that and say, there has to be such a better way. We have to be able to do this differently. And to know to see the gap and then fill it, to have the courage to do that. I'm so glad that you did. Incredible.
Oh,
And
thank you
we
for
need
saying it. I
that.
mean, it's insane, right? You have to be a little insane to even think that you might in any way be able to contribute to something that feels like such a big experience. And,
Right.
any of us are just so small. We're just one person. And so
Mhm.
I was lucky enough in that I had the faith of so many of my colleagues. I started an employee resource group for caregivers and aging parents at Facebook. And so this was like a 4,000 person strong, incredible community of dear friends. They became very dear friends of mine. I was the moderator for this group, and they gave me so much courage. They were like, this needs to be
Yeah.
fixed. Like, go,
We
girl,
need
go
it.
do this. And so I didn't have to just be brave on my own. I had this whole collective of just wonderful friends pushing me forward that made me feel, brave enough, strong enough, supported enough to go off and really take my life in a totally different direction.
Right, right. Yeah, I just saw Simon Sinek was sharing. There was a clip, and he was talking about those really hard moments in life or making a decision or making a change. And he was like, truly, you just need one person in your life or a friend that's like, I got you. I got you. I see this for you. And there's that, it also reminds me of that other quote, and I'm not going to get it right, but it takes like 3 seconds of bravery, right? Like you just lean into that. Obviously, for you, it was bravery over time to see it through, but to have those moments of courage and
Oh,
bravery to make it
you
come
know, I have to
together.
give my dad credit for that. My dad was such a brave and continues to be such a brave person. He
Mhm.
role modeled that for me so often, it was normalized.
Mm,
One of the helpful tricks around bravery that I found is actually it's almost an exercise of looking at the opposite, which is failure and normalizing failure. So it's not necessary to have to be so brave if you've already worked through it not being that big of a deal if you fail, right?
so
It's
good.
less of a mountain to climb. And so, you know, my team will hear me say this all the time. I'm like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You
Mhm.
know, like, okay, so you think that you can go out and make a difference. Turns out you can't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the problem is still there. It was still there before you started. So, you know what? There's not that much lost in this.
Mm,
But the upside is if you actually can do it, now you've done something that's unlocked a better
mhm,
experience for, you know, hundreds of millions of people.
mhm.
So, when you kind of take that equation, it starts to feel less like you even need 3 seconds to be
Right.
brave to do it.
Oh, completely. I love that. I'm going to think about that. Absolutely.
Normalize failure.
Oh, yeah. So true. When your dad began showing signs of Alzheimer's and everything changes, and you talk about those gaps, like those massive gaps, what did that time of life reveal to you about what families really need and what we're often missing and where you needed to be able to step in?
Oh, I mean, even now, and I talk about this often, it's so hard for me to even go back to that
Mm,
point. And
mm,
I hear this a lot from, you know, we now have tens of thousands of families who are going through this alongside us on our platform. And when we talk to them, and we're talking to them every week, you hear it, you almost enter this fugue state blackout zone of the early moments. It's like you're in a tunnel and you're
mm.
trying, you know, you've had the bad thing has just happened. You've gotten the diagnosis, or, you know, you've had the emergency, and it's almost like the information is coming at you, but it's just bouncing off of you. It's very weird. And I thought this was a me thing. And then I've heard this so often from others. I think it must be almost like a biological fight or flight
Oh,
when
I'm
you're
sure.
entering into this stage. This was hard, you know. Nobody wants this diagnosis. It was crushing for my dad. It was scary for me. I had such little education on what Alzheimer's was at that point. I didn't even know the difference between early onset. Like all of this was so new to me. You know, I'd only vaguely been aware of this disease at all. And I didn't even know the right specialists for this, and neither did my dad. So this was just a very difficult couple of years for us. What now I realize is the moment where you go from diagnosis to stabilization as a
Yeah.
family. And this is this very choppy waters in between where everyone's now trying to get educated, figure out what their role is in all of this. What does
Mhm.
this mean? A very trying time. And I think that was my great education into our healthcare system. It was my education into what it means to be taking over on behalf of someone else in decision making. We hadn't really trained for this moment. And so it felt a lot like things were coming at me as opposed to the rest of my life, which is me having some agency, me making decisions. And I kind of lost my own identity into it at that point. I still didn't know what caregiving was, but you lose your identity into this sense of illness. Even as a family, everything is seen through the prism of illness, which is weird. And it was definitely weird for my dad. My dad is the most like high agency human being you can imagine. You know, he's a ship captain. Everything is about steering his own life. And so this was an entree into what felt like a totally different paradigm of how to live a life. And it felt so incongruous to all of the values, the principles of how we as a family had operated into that point, which is a high agency, brave,
Mhm.
courage, pushing ourselves. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, are we victims? What is this now? I'm not sure. And
Mm.
so that became what at first was a very difficult education into Alzheimer's, dementia. I've heard this said a few times. Even Emma Hemming Willis, we just had the opportunity to sit down with her for a little while, and she talks about, leaving the doctor's office. I had a similar experience, and you just don't have any resources with you. You're now entering into what feels like this black hole. I don't know if you ever really recover your sense of footing for quite some time coming out of that moment. It takes a while. So I feel for anybody who is experiencing it now, it kind of haunts me, just because of how singularly different that moment feels like to everything your life has been up until that news.
You described that so well, and I'm sure you gave words to so many people that didn't know how to articulate what they were feeling and experiencing, and that's a gift in and of itself. And it's almost that nervous system response anytime you have like massive change or trauma in a way where everything's different, everything changes. And you talk about the identities, and there's right, they all collide. All of a sudden, it's daughter, but you need to be a caregiver and organizer and manage crisis. And they all come together in a way that we haven't had to manage before. For you, was there a way that you could make space for all of those parts of yourself? Or is it just that you're kind of in survival mode and you figure it out as you go? What have you learned about that process in the meantime?
I mean, I probably had a unique experience in that because my dad raised me as a single parent, I
Mm,
had to step into roles that weren't necessarily traditional for many years. I was signing my own release waivers at third grade for going on the field trip, because my dad had so much on his plate. We kind of just pitched in
mhm,
and we were just
mhm,
making it work and getting by. So this idea of collapsing of roles is something that's like very instinctual to
mhm,
me from a very early age. But for sure, I think one of the most profound experiences, and I didn't understand this until, maybe 6 years after, is I really lost my sense of self
mhm,
into what now I realize is being a caregiver. But at that time, it was like Alzheimer's just became my life or an umbrella around which I became sort of this like entity that's trying my best to check off a to-do list, but I kind of lost my sense of Shauna in
mhm,
that. And most of my day was guided by fear of getting fired because I'm distracted, fear
right.
of missing a prescription, fear of not getting the right legal document before I had no more time left with my dad, fear of how angry my dad was going to be when he realized we had taken away his keys.
Mhm,
So there's just this really uncomfortable zone to live through. I I still struggle with this idea of who am I outside of being a mom and being, a daughter and being responsible, and being now a boss and
mhm,
what does it look like to just be a human? I kind of lost that when, I've heard a good friend talk about this. You're recruited into caregiving. You don't elect to do this, especially for
mhm,
families. You just instantly are now a new thing. And you have to now somehow make amends with that. What I find now, how I keep my sanity in all of this and how I make space for myself is one, you need buddies who will keep you accountable and give you permission to do simple things like actually carving out 30 minutes for yourself to go to that yoga class or go on a walk or, you know, take 30 minutes to just go and have some time to yourself. You need someone else to almost make that okay. At least I do.
mhm,
And then if I don't have that buddy, and I'm very lucky to have a few girlfriends who will do this for me and really push me to
mhm.
do this, but I have to think about what I would do for someone else because for so many of us, it's intuitive to care for others that it's easier for me to imagine how I would care for a girlfriend than it
Yeah.
is for me to actually
Mhm.
advocate for myself.
That I relate to that so much. And I find There was something I was going through, and I was having emotions about it, and I was sharing about it with my best friend. And she had said, she was like, stop talking about my friend like that. Like, I love you. And it was almost that separation of, well, exactly, because like what I would share and
Mm.
what I would speak into a friend's life would be different. And it shouldn't be than how we speak to ourselves or give ourselves permission for that. And so just the reminder of that and similar, that's along the lines of what you were sharing about that, right? It's easier almost to have it be that external conversation rather than internal, but we need to like put that gaze back on us to do
Sounds like a
that.
good friend.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone needs one. Everyone needs one. And you need to
Yeah.
be intentional about it too.
Hmm.
Ask that person you know you'd always want to go to battle with, you know, that
Hmm.
she or he is the one who's always going to be like the protector, the defender, to just check you when you don't see it yourself. We all have these
Yeah.
blind spots. And so
Yeah.
it's good to have those sort of like safe words. You know, it's
Oh,
time to
true.
take a nap, right?
Exactly. I know the same friend the other day we were chatting and she was like, "How have you cared for yourself today?" You know, or how are you loving yourself today? And I love, and that's just a great reminder to ask people in our lives that question of the reflective moment because sometimes we don't even think about that, right? So,
You
yeah,
know, I was at
so
the
good.
Alzheimer's. I was so happy. We did all of these great initiatives with the Alzheimer's Association over the last
Mm,
several weeks. And one of the things that we did was we attended this amazing caregiver event that they held in New York City, and they do an intake, caregiver stress. And this wonderful social worker was asking me, you know, they do the whole intake. And I was like, I should do this because I need to go and talk to everyone and be able to explain this myself, but I'm not thinking about it as a caregiver myself. I'm going through this and they ask you, you know, like, do you feel like you like remove yourself from social situations in order to provide care? And I'm like, yes. And, you know, it's like they go through all of these things and I'm like, oh my God, I look like I'm like a completely urgent case. I'm just not caring for myself. So I
yeah.
go in with this assessment and this woman is like, well, what do you do? What do you actually do for yourself? You know? And I was like, well, on the weekends, I love to spend time with my kids. Like, I love it so much. And she's like, yeah, but that's also not caring for yourself. I was like, oh, truth bombs. Yeah, you're absolutely
The
right.
mirror, the mirror.
Yeah. Everybody needs that. We all need it, right? Just to do a little bit of a
Oh,
readjustment and then check in
yeah.
with ourselves. So
Yes,
even now, you know,
exactly.
it's a constant practice.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the duality of emotions around that, right? Holding both of the privilege it is to care for someone, but then also the challenge and the pain or hard parts of that. Do they live together for you? How do you navigate those two emotions? What do you find in that?
You know, first I'm both half Chinese and half Irish. And
Mhm.
I feel like the Irish side of me has always done a really good job of living in this tension of both tragedy and humor.
Oh,
Right? That's just a perspective on
yeah,
life. And
yeah,
so there's a lot I pull from that
yeah.
background in thinking
Mm,
about care because on the same day you can have the most wonderful thing happen and
mm,
also the most devastating thing happen. And both of these things are happening almost on top of each other. This happens a lot when, you know, my 4-year-old will ask questions about, you know, why does grandpa not have words the way that others do, you know, because
mm,
one of the areas of the brain that it's the Alzheimer's is really affected for my dad is the language center. So he really struggles with aphasia. Um, and that's so hard to explain to a 4-year-old, you know?
mm,
And at the same time, watching as the two of them connect almost like a 4-year-old to a 4-year-old, like the joy of them playing and not needing words, and so witnessing all of this and staying open
mm,
to that, that this can
mhm,
also be completely devastating. And you know, I can feel so robbed of so much from this
mhm.
experience, while at the same time watching this unadulterated childlike joy from both my dad and my daughter as they meet each other on the same plane is
So good.
life. right?
Yeah.
That's what makes
Yeah.
this so messy and
Mhm.
wonderful and
Mhm.
hard for all
Mhm.
of us. And I think the hardest part is just staying open to both and being okay with both, especially being those strong pulls on the continuum.
Mhm.
When you're in a position in which you are providing care, you're going to see all of it, and you're going to see more of it here than you are on any other walk of life almost.
Completely. Right. And you talk about your dad's independence, right? That's a big part of who he is and how he was a leader, and shifting the focus on now he's needing help. What did you learn from your dad, or what do you still learn from your dad about dignity and autonomy and the desire to still be known with and all of that when now he's needing more support and more care?
It's, asking for help, it's an act of grace, right? To do this, it's something we
Mhm.
all struggle with, I think, because we assign so much negativity around it. It must mean you're weak if you're asking for
Mm,
help. Must mean that you can't keep up if you're asking for help. You have somehow haven't done enough, right? And so, I've thought about this a lot because my dad is so independent. He has been for so long. What did it mean for our relationship to change? What did it mean to start to think about how we built out a care team for him and also be there to support him through, an increasing journey where he is leaning more and more on all of us for help?
mm,
There is a grace to that surrender.
mhm,
We eventually got there. It took us years with my dad. He did not want help from any of us. And I understand, you've lived your whole life, not like increasingly not needing help. So what is this reversal where suddenly you need it? And do you trust who's giving it to you? Do they have the right ideas? And all of this is being worked out, within a family where relationships are changing. There is something so beautiful about needing, accepting help from those who are
mm,
willing to give it. You hear this anecdote go around from the anthropology circles, which is that the moment civilization occurred was the minute you saw a healed broken femur in a
mm,
skeleton, and the reason being for that in the wild, if an animal was to break their femur, that's it, game over. You can't hunt for yourself, you can't protect yourself. But that the minute you go back in time for us as humans and you start to see healed femurs, what you're actually seeing is that humans are starting to care for one another and help each other in these moments of
wow.
vulnerability. And
Wow.
so there is something so essential and something so real about us as a
Mm,
species being there for each other, whether it's a femur, whether it's Alzheimer's, and being able to step in that way where we're thinking about the collective versus just having to think about ourselves. That I think is a real invitation for all of us to actually explore these really wonderful parts of what it means to be part of a community, to be part of a family.
I love that. There's such vulnerability in being cared for
Mm,
and being a part of those intimate moments and caring. I know in my life when I've been a part of whether it's bathing someone or at their final moments, the intimacy and the privilege that not everyone in someone's world has the honor of being a part of those vulnerable, really precious moments, right? When you look at it like that. So, what a depth of
so
relationship that
powerful.
that brings. Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
powerful perspective you're bringing to the
Mm,
world, having been
mm,
invited into those
mm,
spaces. They are
mm,
so intimate. I mean, I
mhm,
liken it almost to birth too, right? These
mm,
moments, they're incredibly
absolutely.
powerful and charged, and it's rare to get to be there to support
Mm,
someone through that. Uh,
mm,
this is what makes this space such an honor to do work
mm,
in. The stakes are high. This
mhm,
is not, this is not something silly or trivial. These things matter.
mm,
So, you know, I think about this every day. I feel so lucky to never question why I'm doing
mm,
what I'm doing or why it matters. And you can't always say that. in every industry. This is really special and unique, and it's a real joy to get to work in this space and think about
Mhm.
things that affect all of us, not even just some of us. We're all aging,
We are all aging.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is for all of us, truly.
Uh, in our conversation, you had used the phrase that power or families as a power source or as the power source in caregiving. How do you define that? Why do you believe that families, not just organizations, must be central if we're going to up level the quality and this industry, as we were just talking about, of we are all aging. This is going to impact every single one of us in that way. And yeah, love to
It's
hear what you think.
First of all, we're so motivated. All you have to do, I mean, you just look inside your own family. How
Mhm.
motivated are we to take care of each other? This isn't something that, is just assigned to us. We intuitively understand what it means to take care of each other when we're vulnerable, when we're weak, when we need each other.
Mhm.
Um, the family is a real team, right? And it's a team in a way that's so much deeper than any work team, although I would argue there's definitely work teams like mine that are just incredibly tight knit. There is this instinctual piece of what it means to be part of a family, and making decisions that are right for members of the family. And this is
Mhm.
especially true when we're talking about aging, when we're talking about managing illnesses like Alzheimer's,
Mhm.
but also a family is an economic unit. I think about when I look at elder care in general, you're talking about, a $17 billion industry here. And so this is a really important set of decisions that a family has to make, similar to college, right? This is an economic decision about how we enter and engage into this space. And
Mhm.
so when I say power source, one, I think a family is a power source and the energy that's required to actually think about doing this work with quality, with care. But also, I think it's a power source in that the family as a consumer, as a unit, is powering this massive industry. And what I see is, these VIPs who are in many cases spending far outside of what it takes to put a kid through college. And on the other side, an industry that's desperately seeking to serve them, but a lot of turbulence and sort of rewiring that needs to happen in between to make the dynamics run the way that so many other industries run, which is that if you compete on the best quality, the best service, surely you should have the best business. That's not
Mhm.
necessarily how it works today. And so I think when I think of families as a power unit, I think like these are the VIPs of this marketplace, and they should be
Mhm.
centered in the way that we think about serving them, the way that we think
Mhm.
about building for them, the way that we think about providing any kind of
Mhm.
service to them as they
Yeah.
are working together to move through this chapter.
Right. And that's such a piece of how challenging healthcare systems are, navigating the senior care ecosystem, how we, so many families, the feedback is, how do I even find what I need, talk to who I need to talk to, get the help that I need to be supported on. And I know it is addressing a lot of those concerns on the challenges that we're all experiencing. So I would love to give people hope and an idea on how that happens.
First, I just want to acknowledge for any person out there who is in the situation that I was in or am in today, which is caring for a family member, or even if they themselves are thinking about in the future what kind of care they want, you already have almost everything you need to make great decisions. You've made them, a billion of them in other ways, all the way through up until this point. And so you have the power. You really do. And all you need is the right information, just a little bit of context setting, a little bit of information to help you get on your way to do what you're already so good at doing, which is instinctually and sort of with savvy understanding what's going to be best for you, what's going to be best for your family member. I think the trick has been that oftentimes we do not approach how we think about care proactively. It's usually in that, what I described earlier, that sort of tunnel moment when you've heard some really bad news, you've had maybe a scary incident that, you're on the other side of, and now it's really hard to engage in the same way that you would when you're in a normal state and when you're just going about your day and making choices.
Yeah.
And so what I am on a mission, and so many of us at tendercare on a mission to do, is to take away some of this fear, this disempowerment, and create more confidence in families to be able to think about this space with the same tools we think about any other decision. And how do you do that? I think one of the things that we have found is try and have this conversation gradually over time in a really safe, non-emergent set of conversations, moments to be educated. So that way you're already prepared, you already have some sense of what to be looking for or where to find it long before you end up in a situation where you may be pretty stressed out. You may not have the same opportunity to really think through things with the right amount of time ahead of time. So creating that confidence starts earlier. It starts when you're at Thanksgiving and you're starting to put the pieces together of, you know, where do you want to live, mom? Do you want to live with my brother, Josh? Do you want to live with me? How are you thinking about this?
Mhm.
Starting to have those conversations and starting to put the puzzle pieces in place gives you the roadmap you need later to be able to rely on when the time comes.
And having everything to where we can have it be accessible and organized, and just the mental load that we carry when everything is in a million different directions, that everyone can come together and have access to information. So we are empowered to show up, make really great care decisions, be a part of that team, feeling like, okay, we've had these conversations ahead of time. We're being really proactive in this way. And just we feel so much more at ease and more prepared within all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a lot of work, right? I think
Mhm.
that's the piece that gets people oftentimes like, oh man, like if I
Mhm.
only have so much time in my day, do I really want to be spending it tracking down, you know, what long-term care insurance policies mom might have in some like dusty filing cabinet somewhere? Or do I really want to have to sit down and use my time with my daughter to have what could be kind of a scary conversation? There's a lot of hesitation around this. And I think one of the things we try to do at TenderCare is create these very easy baby steps to accrue this knowledge as a family, to start to put this information in place over time really easy. It doesn't need to be some huge project that has to be tackled, and it sacrificed an afternoon to, that could have been spent doing something really fun. This is like 5 minutes here, there to
Right.
get a lot of this in place. And you'd be amazed how far a family can get with just a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there. Oh yeah, that's right. Let me take a picture of this Medicare card. We're just gonna like store it here for,
Mhm.
when the time comes. It's actually quite easy to do. And I mentioned accountability partners for friends. We have a whole community at Tender Care too that helps one another get emergency ready. It takes 2 minutes. It's really not a lot of time. These things are easy, and it's easier when you have others who are doing it along with you. So you can be motivated together to get a lot of these things done.
Yeah, and to have the guidance, right? I think we don't even know where to start sometimes. So having the support in that of helping us think through things that are really important that we don't know what we know that we need or something like
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Totally. And
Yeah.
and the coolest part of all of this is, this is not just a family in isolation on their
Mhm.
own, having to figure it all out by themselves. There is
Right.
a whole array in every community of the most incredible neighbors, humans who are there to step in and help.
Mm.
This is, I think, the light bulb moment that we find for so many families. They have no idea. There's this whole array of incredible experts in their local community who do things they've probably never heard of, like ambulatory dentistry. Like, this is an amazing
So cool.
service,
Yeah.
right? You can actually bring the dentist into your home. You don't have to go through the whole process of going to the dentist and filling out all the forms. And there's all kinds of things like this that exist that are right there for you if a family is made aware that these services are right there in your own backyard. So it's one of the things that we are so proud of is arming a family with the right tools to be able to match some of the things they're going through with who the right people are, often in their same neighborhood, who are able to come in and be of service and to help with a lot of this.
Mm,
So, making sure that we are connecting those dots and one, educating a family on what actually exists in elder care and senior care. It's so much more expansive than we normally give it credit for. It's usually like 16 or 17 different professions, especially now that we see so many people choosing to age in place. And then on the other side, making sure that those who are in the community can compete on their quality. How trustworthy are they? How much do they really bend over backwards for a family? And trust me, there are some who are just doing incredible initiatives, projects, programs, and making sure that they can be seen. So many of these professionals, they didn't get into this to be great marketers, and go out and conquer Google. Like that's just not what they were called to. So how do you make sure that they shine, that they're known, that you can find them? That's definitely our mission.
I love that. What a gift. What a gift. And you have such a great team of people, and including Chris, who I know is a great storyteller and brings so much heart to the work. And it is, you are truly partnering with families. You're walking with them. You're available in all of those ways. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
so
so
cool.
lucky. I was very intentional about this. I wanted to build a team that had care in their DNA. They had made the
Mm,
choice long before they ever knew about tender care, before they ever met me, that they had already decided that this is important to them at, a family level. And so those of us at tender care, the majority, almost everyone, is either actively caregiving like myself for someone or has. And I think that allows us to not say in theory we're walking a mile, in the shoes of all of the people who are on our platform, but that we empathize at a real level with the
right.
problems many of us are facing at the same time. And I think that
Mm,
allows us to not build what in theory should help, but actually build for our own families first what we need to problem solve as we're walking alongside everybody who's at tender care.
incredible. I want to continue talking for like hours.
I know, Nicole. I'm like, wait, we
Ah,
need to go. You need to
I
come to my
know,
house. We
I
need to light a
do.
fire. I
We
need a
do.
tea, like a mug of tea in your hands. I need to know
Exactly.
everything.
Oh, I feel the same. We're gonna make it happen. We are. We are.
Yes. Um,
For families to feel what gives you hope right now, and where can we learn more about tender care and the work that you're doing, engage with you, support the incredible initiatives that you have? How can we show up for you?
you know, especially with Thanksgiving coming, I feel so grateful. Feel so grateful to have been welcomed into the industry. There's just so many incredible people who believe in creating this new version together of a more confident experience a family can walk through from, the stage in which we're thinking about getting care or we're caring for one of our family members,
Mhm.
finding trusted people on the other side. I'm so hopeful that this generation of incredibly talented young people are choosing to come and work at a company like Tender Care. They believe in building this future above so many other things they could be working on. They want to see this happen. And that is incredible. I'm seeing more and more young people think about this every day. And um, that only means good things for all of us. We're talking about our own kids. They're eventually going to be caring for us. I'm like, nice, good. I'm glad we got a whole army coming to
Oh,
build with all these tools. This is wonderful. And what I would say about tender care, I'm so proud of this. It's such a gift to do this work. And as part of that, My favorite part about tendercare is it's a gift for all of our families. We intentionally make this free for everyone. And we're constantly asked, what's the catch, right? Because we're so used to like, well, is it really free? No, we've actually made all of our tools free. You can download our free apps. We have emergency ready cards that you can put in a wallet on your refrigerator for first responders. You can order these for free on our website. We walk you through all kinds of different tools to get organized, have conversations with your family members. You can even do assessments, have one of our team review these and really hunt down resources, services, free community resources. This is all just waiting for anyone who wants it. So I highly, highly encourage and welcome anyone who's interested. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, like what's the worst that could happen? It's free. Come check us out. We're so proud of this work. We want to invite you to come and be part of this with us. How we keep the lights on, there's no catch. It's literally just going out and finding the best provider, local, Main Street USA, local businesses who believe in what we're bringing to the world, who are willing to underwrite everyone's free tools just for the opportunity to be considered a trusted business in the community. This is a world that I believe in. It's a world I believe in giving to our kids. It's wonderful. We're on every social platform, thanks to Chris Punsalon. So you can find us on Instagram, or Try Tendercare, on Facebook, again, Try Tendercare, on TikTok even now. We're everywhere. And our hope is that we vote, all of us collectively, we vote for what we want to exist in the world. And so we invite those who believe in this, believe in a more confident chapter for families to plan ahead, to start to organize, to really be connected and vote with their wallets to the businesses that are giving the best service and the best quality. That's what we believe a good marketplace looks like. So just come be part of this with us. And the best part of all of this is, we listen all the time. We listen to those families who are on our platform when they want something new, that we'll build it for you. So we're in constant conversation and dialogue, and we'd love to invite you to come be part of it with us.
So good. And it's the collective. It has to come together. And I have such a full heart visiting with you, learning from you, hearing you share. And I know everyone else will too. So thank you, my
Thank
friend.
you so much. This is such a pleasure. I could do this for hours with you, Nicole.
I could too. We'll do it again.
Done.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.